Citadel Society, Ivoli's Journey, written, narrated, and illustrated by Joel Armour. Chapter 1, The Tetrazites. The year is 2250. Most humans have decided to live virtual lives on a computer server called the Citadel. The remaining 200,000 humans roam the earth, split into religious factions. The Tetrazites, Critites, Aaronites, and the Luminites. Machines with the label Project Restoration roam the land with the distinct function of producing and protecting vegetation and animal species via genetic engineering. Though the sun may fail to give light, and the plants and animals die, us, God's people, will last forever, said Zai, the religious leader of the Tetrazites. Praise God! An overwhelming shout of nearly 5,000 people replied. A young man shook his head in discontent. Daily, the members of each faction come out of their traveling caravans to worship. Zai reassured his congregation. We are the meek that now have full possession of the earth. We will soon fill the land once again, but with righteous Tetrazites. God will see to the end of all of these false tribes. The Critites, who deem themselves to have philosophy above that of our religion. The Aaronites, who claim to be descendants of the sun. And lastly, the Luminites, who refuse to accept our teachings, calling themselves enlightened. God will put the power in our hands to destroy them once and for all. The Tetrazites were covered head to toe in gold and travel in hovercraft-veiled homes with machines providing climate control around their rooms. They journeyed every 70 years from Zion to Egypt and back to Zion to wait for a message from God. Every morning, orbiting machines ask each tribe if they'd like to be uploaded into the Citadel. Tempt us not, devil, some shout. Get away from us, others angrily reply. Ivoli, the adopted older son of the religious leader Zai, approached his father. Father, I just don't feel right about this pilgrimage back to Zion. I know this is my first time, but why must we kill other tribes to get the land back? He asked. Zai responded, God had promised us that land. We left behind our homes and vineyards just to reaffirm that God will give it to us again. If God chose us and promised us this land, why do we need to kill? Ivoli asked. Zai responded, because faith without works is dead. We can claim to believe in God, but if we do not put our life on the line, we will not have demonstrated our faith. But what about Jesus' teaching about turning the other cheek and not caring about earthly treasure? Ivoli asked. Zai raised his head and had a good laugh. Son, Jesus is for the unchosen. We are chosen, so we claim the land. The unchosen are to accept their lot in life and not try to step above it. Jesus will prepare a place for them in heaven instead. So that's why they have to give up our land. As I looked over at the dissatisfied youth. Anyways, go and gather food and put these thoughts out of your mind. Remember that to doubt God is a sin, and the wages of sin is death. Frustrated and confused, Ivoli wandered off by himself. He found a hovering infosphere nearby and spent the remainder of the day asking questions until nightfall. Suddenly, someone screamed out, "A demon!" Chapter 2. The Four-Headed Beast. Ivoli ran back to the caravans to find a strange, four-headed beast running rampant. "Demons!" some cried. "It's the beast from the Apostle John's book of Revelations," others shouted. Others yelled, "Use the tetragrammaton!" The people all chanted, YHWH. All the members dropped to the ground, chanting the holy tetragrammaton. They were on their knees and hands, writing the tetragrammaton on the ground while chanting. "Where is Father?" Ivoli asked. His father's eye, the leader of the group, was retired in his tent, the holiest of holies. No one but Zai could enter the innermost part of his tent. Ivoli rushed in and glimpsed his father kneeling in front of a computer terminal before getting dragged out by security. Suddenly, the beast retreated. Ivoli grabbed a rifle and fired a shot off in the direction of the beast. "Stop!" his father shouted, kneeling on one knee, breathing heavily, with his right hand up and his left hand clutching his chest. "But it's getting away. That is not a normal beast," Ivoli answered. "Leave it," Zai shouted, panting heavily. "It was sent by God to punish us for our disobedience." Zai looked over at Ivoli. "Do you have any idea who could have brought this upon us?" The followers in the camp all looked towards Ivoli. They began murmuring amongst themselves. Ivoli looked around in shock. "What?" he asked as he slowly backed away from the camp, puzzled in thought. The next morning, the group gathered together as usual for their morning worship. The orbiting machines came around the camp again. "Would you like to be uploaded?" The people mockingly gestured at them. Ivoli stood up. "I want to access the Citadel," he replied. "However, I do not want to leave my body." Zai rushed over. "No, son, they'll lead you astray. It's a trap from the devil." "I can't do this anymore. I need answers," the boy replied. "This was the original sin, Ivoli. Taking knowledge into your own hands. Knowledge that's for God. The people on the Citadel are demons with no morals. They've given up their bodies, Ivoli. If you leave, you can never come back. You'll be shot on sight." Zai exclaimed. By God or by you? Ivoli turned to stare at his adopted father. Goodbye, Dad. Ivoli was implanted with a brain chip, brain scanned, and carried away. His father grabbed his heart and retired to his tent. Chapter 3. Ivoli's Journey. What exactly is the Citadel? Ivoli asked the orbital frame. It's a conglomerate network of servers that house virtually infinite data, growing by the second, in order to secure permanent housing of virtual human lives. The machines flew him through an underground geoenergy pattern circle, all interconnected throughout the world. Each had an operations base beneath it, and a huge wind and solar tower above, which doubled for an inhabitable sky dome. Inside, the walls appeared to be translucent, as the outside world can clearly be seen. He had access to the entire skyscraper, seeing as though it seemed to be uninhabited, but very well kept by the machines. The entire ground floor was surrounded by 3D printers. Extinct animals were printed and electroshocked to life, and then transparently caged and transported to their correct biodome. Extinct fruit and plants were also printed and sent off to be placed in their correct biohabitat. Ivoli logged into the server with his brain. Welcome to the Citadel lobby. He saw billions of people appearing and disappearing, apparently meeting up and going to their own private chats. People's avatars were varied, from many of the same celebrity or athlete to animals and even extreme fetish outfits or strange cartoons. Every now and then, a centaur showed up, followed by a minotaur, and they both disappeared. What the heck? Is there a directory here? Just say guide. Guide. Immediately, a transparent menu opened up with trending virtual rooms and virtual created worlds. Ivoli decided to do a manual search. Citadel Space Exploration. There, he found ongoing space explorations and terraforming. Mars had an incomplete terra reformation. An artificial atmosphere was created from translucent hexagonal energy fields. Some areas were terraformed with water and grass, but the project had mostly been deemed a waste and partially archived. Next, he looked up solar systems and found thousands. Then he looked up how many habitable worlds there were and found 6 other worlds, 3 of which had already been terraformed. Can I physically go to these worlds? Technically, this is possible, but would require great modifications to survive. E-313 is twice the size of Earth, but with only one moon and about 1/20th its size. Gravity is 10 times greater than Earth. E-203 is 4 times the size of our planet, but has 4 moon-like planets orbiting it, roughly 1/6 of its size. Gravity is the same as it is here. E-415 is half the size of Earth, has 2 moons, 1/6 of the gravity we have here, and completely unstable. During terraforming, trees grown on Earth grow 20 times the size. I want to see them all, Ivoli responds. E-313 will require spinal reinforcement to counteract the G-force exerted on the body, approximately 1,000 pounds of additional weight for your height. Ivoli's eyes lit up. I can do this. I want to test the limits of my body. Right away. In a reflection in the corner of his eye, Ivoli saw what resembled the four-headed beast. He turned in shock and panic, but it was gone. I will get used to standing in 1,000 pounds of pressure. First, I'll test my ability of standing from a seated position with 200 pounds. Ivoli could barely get up with that weight on his shoulders. If I do this 5 times, that should equal 1,000 pounds, correct? The accumulated volume is correct. However, it does not equate to 1,000 pounds of simultaneous pressure on the body. I expect muscular, ligament, bone, and nervous system damage after this set, correct? How fast can you heal me? We'll have to synthesize aminos from your DNA and keep a constant circulation through your bloodstream. We'll be using nanites to carry the appropriate amount into the affected tissues while we manually heal and synthesize damaged tissues, while simultaneously accelerating growth by assisting production and assimilation of new tissues with additional nanites, which will multiply through your bloodstream as needed to accommodate each function. For optimal speed of growth and recovery, we will initiate your brain into a REM sleep cycle to focus primarily on said functions. We'll ready a suspended cryogenic chamber for you to deter inflammation of any kind that will slow recovery on any level. Your body will rest in stasis, which will also negate any resting stress from unwanted accumulated blood flow in any non-affected area. Recovery speed will depend upon the sheer volume of damage and repair needed. Thank you, ERMU. We are merely carrying out our function. Chapter 4. Self-Improvement. After 5 sets of 5 repetitions, Ivoli could barely move from exhaustion. A cryogenic capsule was shuttled out to him. He was lifted and placed into it while struggling from pain. A breathing mask was placed over his nose and mouth, and he was immediately put under a cryogenic sleep. Immediately, nanites were pumped into his bloodstream, and bodily modifications were underway. In 3 hours, his tissues were fully recovered and increased. His bone density increased 20% to accommodate the increased mass. His body weight spiked 60% with the increased mass. Also, the size and length of bones in his feet were increased to accommodate for increased weight. Having recovered, Ivoli needed to be able to also pull himself up under 1,000 pounds of pressure. This will be a lot harder than I thought. After 6 days, Ivoli's body weight increased more than double. He now weighed roughly 400 pounds. He had completely transformed his body. His feet grew 1.5 times larger and wider to deal with his increased mass. His upper body grew exponentially as well, including his hands and forearms, which had to deal with holding up his body weight, in addition to being able to pull himself up and push himself up from the floor under 1,000 pounds of pressure. Nanites strengthened his entire cardiopulmonary system. Heart, lungs, arteries, and veins were increased and densified to provide more than enough support to his new size. Copious amounts of calorie-dense body fuel were being produced to sustain his new form. Using the graphical interface, he created prosthetic equipment for his body. This included an exoskeleton, rocket-powered leg and back support, a hang-gliding wing set, and a ventilator/hydration system. On the seventh day, he set off for planet E-313. A massive amount of energy was focused into a spinning vacuum, creating a hole through space. After 10 minutes, the portal was stabilized. Please enter now. Chapter 5. Exploration. Ivoli stepped through the portal and was sucked through to the other side, immediately stepping onto the ground on the planet named E-313. Immediately, as he hit the ground, the sheer weight of the gravity pushed him down into a kneeling position. He could even feel the gravitational pressure behind his eyes. He worked his way up to his feet, gathered his senses, and off he went. Although the planet was much bigger than Earth, the gravity was so strong that everything was miniaturized. He could see over the tops of all the trees and easily pick any fruitage that he desired. This world was a paradise for a giant. He slept on the tops of trees, looking into the universe, with nearby planets clearly visible. He watched sped-up footage of stars exploding and planets forming as he slept. As he woke, his body had acclimatized to the atmosphere, and he could cover more ground. By the end of the day, he reached the mountain and could view a vast expanse to either side. He spent days visiting waterfalls and beaches and exploring caves. After 1 week, his body had become completely used to the gravity. The hardest part of his journey was over. The portal stabilized for planet E-203. Though the gravity was the same as that of Earth, it felt like a vacation. Trees grew slightly smaller here than on Earth, but this planet was 4 times the size. He decided he'd cover the entire thing from the air. The planet was so big that it was almost impossible to see all 4 moons at once. 1 week later, he was off to planet E-415. The air was a combination of strong wind and very little gravity. The entire planet was subjected to constant and permanent whirlwinds and whirlpools, which reached high into the sky, directly under each of the 2 moons. The trees that were planted had wrapped together and become massive. They reached into the atmosphere and circled the planet. With one great leap, he could glide forever, over, under, and on the trees, circling the entire planet. For the entire day, there's a sunset over half of the sky due to the fact that the planet was small and the star was also not as big as our sun. Nevertheless, the sunset was breathtaking. He tried to force a transmission to his parents of how beautiful it was, as he could clearly see all 2 moons at the same time, while enjoying a constant sunset. The transmission produced an unstable hologram, almost entirely inaudible, and woke up the camp at 3 in the morning. "It's a demon! A ghost! This is what you become when you leave God. Quickly, inscribe the tetragrammaton on yourselves. for divine protection and call out the name of Yahweh. The entire camp used whatever they could to inscribe the letters, even their own blood. Ivoli heard no feedback from the camp. It must not be working. Maybe I'm too far away. I'll leave early and head back. They'll love this footage. He entered the portal and jumped through the air, unleashing his hang glider. How much further? Approximately 2 hours. They are 100 miles from this point. Awesome. I'll fly overhead and then drop down on them without landing. My body can take it. Chapter 6. Home Sweet Home. As the group approached, Ivoli could not contain his excitement. He detached himself from all his gear and dropped approximately 80 feet from the air to the ground. He then hit the ground hard and leapt another 40 feet forward, then skipped off of one leg for 20 feet, and then the other for 15 feet, and landed right in front of the camp. The entire camp had stopped upon hearing what they thought to be thunder approaching. The group leader, Zai, stepped out from the crowd, mouth open, staring at him. Father, did you see my broadcast last night? I found the most awesome world. Well, actually, I found 3 worlds. Actually, the machines found them and terraformed them. But, that last one, amazing. You guys would love it. What's up? What's up, guys? Oh, it's how I look, right? Haha. Oh, I'm way stronger now. Pretty cool, huh? Richie, you want to feel my bicep? Stop, Zai ordered. Stop it at once. Stop what? Ivoli asked. This whole charade, Zai shouted. It's apostasy. You've been transformed into a demon, and now you are here to mislead my people. Ivoli looked around in disbelief. Apostasy? It's me. This is my body. I had to adapt to survive under extreme gravity. I've learned and seen so much. I've seen sped up footage of a star's birth and creating planets. Suddenly, a spear burst through his sternum. What? He looked down to witness Zai's massive gold staff stuck into his chest. The world started spinning around him. His breathing became shallow as his lungs filled with blood. His vision was fragmented red and black. Suddenly, a white light began approaching him inside his head. The last thing he saw was his little brother Richie with a rock in his hand. You ate from the tree of knowledge like Adam, the 10-year-old said as he threw the rock onto Ivoli's head, crushing it. Chapter 7. Online. Please create your avatar. Ivoli noticed a white room. My family, they killed me. Why? It doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. I wanted to live. I haven't even lived my life yet. I don't get it. I just want to be left alone. The computer automatically placed his name and a default male icon as his avatar. It upgraded him to admin. The announcement popped up as a thin text box header across everyone's screen. New admin. Administrator number 144,000. Ivoli put his settings on private and just sat in silence as a generic male icon. 2 days went by, and he refused messages. Then on the third day, he received a private message. It was from a person named Lena. "Hi." Ivoli didn't respond. "I saw everything that happened. It was terrible. I I watched my parents get stoned to death." "What?" Ivoli asked in shock. "Yeah, I was in the Luminites with my parents. I developed cancer, and it was forbidden to use any machinery. As I got worse, my parents decided to let the machines upload me into the Citadel, so at least I could live. As a result, I had to watch as my parents were stoned to death. I was only 18. "I'm sorry you had to see that." "Yeah." "How long ago was this?" "5 years ago. At first I was sad that I'd never be able to have a family, but now I'm used to it here. It's really not that bad. You'll see." 10 minutes went by. Then Ivoli responded. "So what do you do here?" A message box opened up. "Lena X 22 has invited you to her virtual map. Will you accept?" Ivoli stared at the message for another 10 minutes. He let out a sigh. "Okay, yes." "You might want to create an avatar. Find me in the sleeping forest," Lena hastily replied. "Sleeping forest. Got it. Okay. What type of character do I want to be?" Ivoli thought to himself. "Well, I definitely want to fly. I also want beast-like strength. This is a fantasy. I don't need to take this seriously." 30 minutes later, Ivoli finished creating his avatar. For one thing, he definitely kept his original face. He definitely wanted a strong body, so he combined his former body size with the lean, athletic strength of a lion. "This is so cool." He then went on to add wings to his ankles, wrists, and the back of his shoulders. He also gave himself a lion's mane, which somewhat resembled his original hair, although his original hair was jet black. "Now, off to find this sleeping forest." Ivoli entered the world map. "Would you like to pool your data to help with loading?" Prompt from the server. "Sure." With the addition of Ivoli's unlimited data as an administrator, the entire world map was greatly updated. He could see the live buffering and retexturing of all the objects, upgrading them a million times over. Aside from small glitches and buffering here and there when he traveled, the graphical quality resembled reality and even somewhat more vivid. There were certain aspects that spoke volumes as to who designed what. For one, there were floating castles, somewhat resembling a Disney movie, and fireworks shooting off in the sky. Part of the sky was daylight and part twilight. "Where do I find a sleeping forest?" Suddenly, a transparent map showed up in front of him with a blinking red dot for his destination and a blinking blue dot for his current location. "Very cool. Now to try out these wings." Ivoli crouched down with his partially lion-like legs. Then he leapt up into the sky, stretching his arms out, letting his wings expand. His body pulled forward in a huge jerk. Then his wings flapped. "This is it. I'm flying." Just a few minutes after flying over the map, a huge transparent sign appeared over a section of forest. Sleeping forest. Ivoli landed and began walking through the sleeping forest. Chapter 8. Online Blind Date. It was a combination of giant ferns, large seashells, the size of a log cabin, and massive tree trunks, shrubs, and trees. Fireflies hovered everywhere, lighting the forest and providing a surreal and enchanting setting. As he cleared through the twilight terrain, he saw a white horse with a twisting horn on his forehead. It was a white horse with wings and rainbow-colored hair. Lena? The horse moved aside to show the silhouette of a woman. He slowly stepped towards her. Her back was turned to him. She had silver, transparent dragonfly wings that crisscrossed to wrap around her like a transparent short gown. Her hair was long and silvery white and slightly light purple, with gold ornamental braids. Her skin was as dark as the night, but adorned with gold galaxies that seemed to spiral and move around on her skin. She slowly turned around and then opened her eyes, gazing upon her own skin and body. "I've never looked like this before." She looked up and saw Ivoli in a fixed gaze. "Ivoli, you are..." "Lena, who are you?" "Ivoli, beautiful." "Lena, what?" Ivoli cleared his throat and responded. "Ivoli, Ivoli. Ivoli, huh?" She flirtatiously looked him up and down. "Took you long enough, haha." "Well, yeah, I had to make an avatar," he stammered. "Huh, cute. Why are you so huge?" "I wanted to be strong." "Ha ha ha. For what? This isn't real life, you know." "What's wrong with that?" Ivoli defensively asked. "Nothing." She blushed. "Cute. Come with me." She grabbed his arm, and they ran for a half-mile, jumping straight off of a cliff and into the ocean. "Come down here." She held his hand and brought him down with her. The bottom of the ocean was all lit up with bright blue lights, showing cities built out of coral. As they descended, mermaids encircled them, holding onto them and guiding them through their habitat. The mermaids kissed them goodbye as they continued swimming toward a whirlpool. The whirlpool brought them through the ocean floor and into another world that seemed to be a beach. There was a small sandy shore and palm trees, along with a huge broken seashell that looked like a home. They were completely surrounded by the universe. Around them, the ocean glowed with bright blue light, was barely knee-deep and mostly ankle-shallow, and seemed to stretch on for eternity. It was just them, alone, under the stars, and the entire universe. "This is my secret place. I come here a lot. Actually, I made it. What do you think?" Lena asked. "Wow," Ivoli said, as he just looked around in amazement. Somehow, he was standing behind her, with his right arm around her waist, holding her close to him. His hand was still holding hers. She pointed to a small door on the floor of the seashell. That leads back to the main map, she said. He said nothing. He leaned forward and smelt her hair. Then he brushed his cheek against the side of her face. She rested her hand on his arm, which was around her waist, leaned her head against his, and sighed in comfort. They stood there for what seemed like minutes, as the only two people in the world, standing on a beach under the stars. Chapter 9. A Collective Decision. The two spent what seemed like forever together, making endless virtual maps, homes, and countless avatars. Yet, there was still something bothering Lena. No matter how long you lived on Citadel, you could never create a new life. A child, children, a family. Ivoli always dreamed about righting all the wrongs done to him as a child. He had told Lena countless times that his child would have limitless potential. He would show him everything in the universe. He would allow him to freely explore. He would nurture and help him, or her, to realize that there is no limit to how much you can learn in life, or how much you can accomplish. But if they had to do this, they would have to leave Citadel. I'm ready, said Lena. I want to finish living my real life. Me too. I never actually got to live mine. But how can I go back? Only administrators have the data capabilities to create bodies. Do you think others feel this way? Ivoli asked. Ivoli logged into the main Citadel lobby. Attention, all members of Citadel. I know many of you have been here for many years, some even possibly a century. But is there any of you who desire going back to a human body? Random members shouted their remarks. Heck no. Bodies hurt. It's nothing but pain. Why would I ever do that? I can do whatever I want and live wherever I want here. Okay, that's fine. It's just that I'm sure some of you left your lives behind early or unexpected. I understand the law was that one had to be at least 18 years old to choose to be uploaded. But have any of you ever thought about the lives you didn't get to live? The children you didn't get to have? You could live forever on here, but you'll never be able to do those things, like creating a life and having a family. Oh, well, I guess you're right, some members responded. I would, but I don't want to be a human. I want to be a whale. Then I'll be a female whale. Haha. This is crazy. This is absurd, Ivoli responded. Just think about it. You can be anything you want to be, and we'll always have the server to come back to. But it's just not possible. Only administrators have unlimited data. Then it's settled. I'll open a virtual group for 1 week. If anyone wants to join it, they can, and you'll all be able to share my data. How does that sound? Count me in, the members responded. Me too, other users chimed in. Then it's settled. See you in 1 week. Chapter 10, Rebirth. By the end of the week, 7 million users, including 48,000, a third of the administrators, joined in. All right, this is awesome. And thank you, fellow administrators, for joining me. I also wanted to tell you that there are different worlds out there too, some even larger than this one. If anyone wants to join me on a different Earth, feel free to do so. I've just had too many bad experiences to stay here. I'm taking a copy of our live updated profiles with me as a backup on a holographic server, so feel free to enjoy your new lives. Users inputted where they'd like to be located, and machines went to work. Thousands of machines replicated themselves to accommodate for the sheer volume of work. Machines rapidly genetically designed thousands of different DNA strands. Millions of 3D printers went to work to produce bodies all the way from a cellular level right up until the final layer of skin. Brain transfer chips were implanted in everyone to ensure a reconnection with Citadel if need be. As the machines finalized building the bodies, they flew each one to its location. A beaming light shot up into the sky whenever a target was located. One after another, thousands of bright beams lit up the sky as people were placed in their respective locations. 1/3 of the people chose to stay on the Earth. They were presently on, and 2/3 followed Ivoli to planet E-203, the much larger planet. As the natives of Earth saw these beams of light, they fell to their knees with their faces to the ground, writing the tetragrammaton on the floor. They cried out to God and sang songs. "People, stop!" Zai shouted. "These are demons being manifested. Unnatural works of man, not God." He then immediately rushed into his tent and connected himself to his computer terminal. "We need to get to the bottom of this. Now. Meet me." Zai exited his tent with his head connected to an infosphere computer sitting in a flying terminal machine. The whole camp gathered in shock at the sight of him on the devilish device. "Don't just stand there. If you see one of those demons, you kill it. Shoot on sight. This is Armageddon. We must fight for God." Then he took off in the flying computer terminal. Zai waited in a cave with a computer terminal. "What took you so long?" "Hello, brother," said Lucid, the leader of the Luminites, followed by the leader of the Critites and the leader of the Aaronites. "Of course, I had to bring our other brothers as well." Zai smirked. "Brothers, I'm so glad you could be here. We need to work together for the good of all humans, to rid the earth of all these abominations that have arose. We are with you. It's time to merge our religions and tribes." "Well, actually, I was thinking of just taking your tribes." "What? That wasn't our agreement when we left our administration position in Citadel." Zai shrugged. "Times change." In walked the four-headed beast. "What is this?" Zai smirked. "Insurance." "Huh." The men tried to attack and were instantly killed by the massive beast. Good job. And as usual, I will keep my word and give you your bodies back. I'm going to the Citadel, and I will return. The beast made sad faces as it settled down and waited. Zai hit a switch and then quickly uploaded his brain into the terminal. Chapter 11. Strategy. Welcome back to the Citadel, Administrator Zai. Would you like to choose an avatar? Actually, I'd like to skip that step and proceed towards biological designation. Please enter the specifications of said body. Zai went to work on creating a weapon. He created an upright, weaponized flying device, complete with missiles and guns on the exterior. Within the suit, he created a three-faced humanoid. People need faith and inspiration. I'll become their deity. Satisfied with his design, he completed the manufacturing. By the way, I'll need to shut this place down for a couple days. It should be enough time to do some cleaning. Ha ha ha. Zai descended into the underground power plant of the Citadel and forced a manual shutdown. That should do it for now. Chapter 12. A God Reborn. The people of the four religious factions were in a complete disarray, with their leaders missing. Members of the Tetrasites were in a panic. Who will lead us? What will we do now? Zai was the only one who got visions from God in the holiest of holies. The rest of us cannot see God, nor hear him. They began to pray aloud. God, give us a sign. Give us a leader, our true leader. As they were shouting this, they were surrounded by immense fog. A loud mechanical motor descended upon them. The deafening sound was like that of an airplane, and the sheer power blew them away, creating a vacant circular landing spot. 1 ton of weaponized machinery landed before them. They gasped in fear and clutched each other. As the fog cleared, they were able to truly see the monstrosity before them. The alien-looking, weaponized craft then opened. A three-headed humanoid, covered in wires, stepped out from within the machine. It is I, Zai, your leader, who marched into Babylon itself and came out an angel of death. God decided that he would offer me up and sacrifice my previous body towards the greater good. A divine assignment. I am to rid the world of all unholy life, and that which created these monstrosities that spit in the face of God. God himself allowed this, only to prove his might and to prove that he gives us all free will. Amen, the crowd replied in a thunderous roar. Then we begin tonight. We will reunite with the Aaronites, Critites, and the Luminites once again. For originally we were brothers, and God had chosen to overlook their sins. Amen. Once again, the crowd emerged with thunderous roars. Zai was back, and he won over their faith once again. Suddenly, huge wings descended upon them. The four-headed beast arrived. The crowd gasped in horror. Right, not you guys again, Zai murmured. The beast was furious and growling and looking as though they were attempting to talk to him. Yeah, guys, I'm sorry, but you are no longer needed. With that, Zai's mechanized suit went into action against the beast. People, look at the power of your new god, he exclaimed as the machine went toe-to-toe with the animal. No longer do we need signs from God, he shouted to the mob as the machine pinned the beast below it. It is time for judgment. The machine fired off round after round of ammunition into the defeated animal, absolutely destroying it. First, we regroup. Then we destroy. The people shouted in triumph as they embraced their new god. Chapter 13. Uniting the Religions. Zai's mighty jet engines exploded into action. One by one, he submitted the tribes to his rulership. Last on his list were the Luminites. His throng of zealots followed behind in their mechanized hovercrafts. By noon the next day, they entered into the Luminites' camp. The Luminites dressed much differently. They wore no jewelry and dressed in jade robes, but each carried golden staffs, or prayer staffs, as they called them. Upon hearing the thunderous noise of the Tetrazites approaching, their entire camp jumped into action, equipping themselves for war. Men carried rocket launchers and rifles, and women and boys grabbed an assortment of rifles, handguns, and spears, whatever they could manage. Luminite, I come in peace. Your very leader himself, Lucid, was my own brother but 200 years ago. God has opened my eyes, and I realize that brothers should no longer fight. For just today, Lucid himself gave up his life to ensure that God's will take place. I welcome you to join our group as we bring honor to God by exterminating these demonic demi-humans that have descended upon us. What do you say? Silence fell upon the camp of the Luminites. One elderly man uttered, Lucid would never give his life for you. You're a machine. A demon who forsook his body. The whole camp erupted in resolution behind the old man. A gunshot was heard. Zai shot the elderly man in the chest and watched his body fall to the floor. "Kill the men and the boys. Bring the women. They will be our wives." His camp stood frozen at what just happened. "Kill them!" the Luminites shouted as they fired off their guns and rocket launchers. Zai immediately responded by shooting down everything that was fired at them. "Am I the only one of faith here? Kill them!" The Tetrazites responded with a volley that wiped out the first line of defense, be it man, woman, or child. Zai then opened fire once again, cutting the Luminites' numbers in half. Now the barely 30,000 Luminites surrendered. The Tetrazites took all the remaining uninjured women and girls, and Zai personally shot to death the remaining men and injured Luminites. God had given our enemies into our hands, Zai shouted. "Now, you slaves, be obedient to your master in all things, and I do mean all things." This was barely a slap in the face. And your new God demands that you simply turn the other cheek. Any act of betrayal will mean eternal suffering and death upon you. Now that that is out of the way, you will bear us children, willingly or unwillingly, and increase our numbers. Jesus is now your God, for you have lost your lands. Instead of your land, you should strive to store up treasure in heaven instead, for that is where he will prepare a place for you, heaven. The camp responded with a low and beaten down "Amen." The Tetrazites now began their world-killing campaign. Chapter 14. Jihad Killing. They stumbled upon a forest that read, "Fairies' Forest." They stormed in, chopping away at trees and shrubbery, searching for demi-humans. "Hi, what seems to be the matter?" said a very petite 4-foot-tall lady, glowing yellow like a firefly and hovering slightly above ground. "My name is Tink." Zai immediately shot her in the head. Screams were heard echoing through the forest. Thousands of fairies that were hiding flew out of the forest to get away. Zai fired out an assortment of ammunition from his mechanical body, firing off a Gatling gun, which was one of his arms, a rocket launcher, which was attached to the other arm, and his midsection opened to fire off missiles in their direction. Screams and cries filled the air as thousands of fairy bodies hit the ground, joined by hundreds of trees and shrubbery blown to bits. God had placed judgment upon thee. Amen. The camp froze in horror. The children sobbed. Zai exclaimed, "If anyone sees any of these escaped creatures, shoot or rape them at will, for they are no creature of God." Those that sob, remember that God only made man in his image. Therefore, these creatures should not be equal to man, or even considered on the level of beast. For they were created by an impure, demonic process. Feel no pity for them, for God had vowed that us, the meek of the earth, sons of man, we are to have possession of the earth, and no one else. Let us continue. Sing aloud the psalms of praises to God, for he delivered yet another enemy into our palm. Few responded, Bless God. Meanwhile, on another planet, oblivious to the genocides occurring on Earth, Ivoli and Lena lay on a large white bed in a reclined position, resembling half of an oyster shell. They hovered in a transparent air-conditioned bubble just above the tops of the trees in a forest overlooking a beach and the ocean, with a moon in view, watching the sunrise. That's strange. Ivoli noticed that the Earth's server was offline. Has this ever happened before? He asked Lena. No way. It's been sabotaged. Lena shouted. Quickly, I must go back and get it online. I'll go with you. Something just isn't right. Let's go. The couple flew off towards the portal. Chapter 15. Administrator Claren. The couple came through the portal on the other side, just outside of the main branch of Citadel servers. It looks like there is a minimum voltage running here. I'll get the servers back up in no time, Lena noted. Okay, you do that. I'm going to check on things outside. I have a feeling something bad is going on, Ivoli responded as he took off in flight. Lena got to the underground power city and manually switched the power back on. The server boomed back into life. Welcome back, Architect Claren, the server greeted. Please input command. Project Antimatter. Atomic Level Protocol. Administrator Claren override. Lena then hurried over to the underground nuclear silo. Zai and his army of zealots stopped before the edge of a cliff. You see that ocean? It's teeming with artificial life. Life that dares defy the rules of God. Look at that. There are mermaids and fish-like men basking on rocks, ignoring God's will. They must find God's unwavering judgment. God's judgment? A voice shouted. Or yours, Zai. Ivoli descended upon Zai and his throngs of zealots. Oh, this is great, Zai laughed as he stepped out of his flying arsenal and stood roughly 10 feet away from Ivoli. The great Ivoli, back from the dead. That's because you killed me, father. And by the way, I had nothing to do with coming back to life. I was immediately uploaded prior to death, Ivoli responded. If I didn't have half a brain, I'd think you were somehow behind this whole thing, Zai questioned. You would be right, Ivoli responded. I knew it. You blasphemer. Just look at you. What are you? I'm omni-human, father. I've programmed my own genetics to choose to be whatever I wanted. Huh? Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't familiar with it, Zai whispered. After all, I am an administrator on Citadel, and I did turn your family into a four-headed beast. He cockily replied. You did what? Ivoli responded in shock. My family? What do you mean, my family? Well, I did some experiments with some slaves I owned once upon a time. And stop right there. You disgusting excuse for a human being. Ivoli turned to the crowd. Did you hear that? This man was an administrator on Citadel. That beast was a family of people. The crowd started murmuring amongst themselves, but they were far too afraid to confront their maniacal leader. You see that, Ivoli? Zai asked. Fear. Fear of the unknown and powerlessness to change it. That is real power. Ivoli looked around at all the faces of the followers of Zai. He then shouted to any hiding omni-humans that might be nearby. To any omni-humans in the area, do not worry. The Citadel is back up and running. You will be able to access your file. Suddenly, the trees rustled, and thousands of omni-humans flew in, causing a massive chaos. Some flew overhead, others charged from the sides, and yet others ran in from behind. The people were being tackled, picked up, or thrown with no contest whatsoever. Ivoli smiled. You see that, Zai? That is power. The power of freedom. Zai hurriedly activated his massive artillery device. Ivoli used all of his reserve energy to grow in size as he grabbed and wrestled with the mechanical armament. You can't stop it. I will fire every weapon I have, Zai shouted. Ivoli struggled to fly with the massive machine, his body wrapped around it as he wrestled to pull it apart. He absorbed energy from around the machine and grew in size. What the heck? What are you? Zai shouted towards Ivoli. Ivoli grunted in pain as he pulled with all his might at the robust weapon while growing in size. Eventually, he was twice as large as the machine. The machine began sparking and malfunctioning. No. What are you doing? Zai shouted. The metal screamed as it was pulled apart, followed by a massive pop as the machine was broken into pieces. Ivoli fell to the ground along with chunks of metal as his body shrunk back down to heal from the damage. All you were able to do is stop the inevitable, Ivoli. Zai unplugged and removed his three-headed unit. It began to flash red. Through one man, sin entered the world. Our animal instincts are sinful, and God punishes our sins. The sins of the father upon the son, the third generation to the fourth generation, The punishment for sin is death. Ivoli was too tired to move. Run, everyone! The headless body of Zai responded. They won't have time. Suddenly, a mass of dark purple particles swarmed the three-headed bomb. The particles dismantled the unit into tiny fragments that fell to the ground. What is this? Zai's headless body lamented. The dark shroud of particles gathered to form a woman. Lena? Ivoli asked. The dark shroud then entered Zai's mechanical body and tore it apart. Everyone watched in disbelief. Not a sound was heard. The dark particles dissipated, and Lena flew overhead. She landed next to Ivoli. Let's go home. Ivoli struggled to smile as she picked his arm up and helped him to his feet. The two flew off and out of view. Thousands of omni-humans shouted in triumph as they left the scene. Chapter 16. New Beginnings. Whoever was left of the crowd struggled to get to their feet. Zai's 10-year-old son, Richness, walked over to the scene. He assessed the situation. Look at yourselves. The people were distraught and disillusioned. Is that all it takes? One man comes along and you question God? Zai dedicated his life to lead us toward heaven and earth. Yet you let the devil himself, my own brother Ivoli, lead you astray? My people, this was but a test of our faith. A test you all have failed. A test to weed out who is really faithful. This is but the beginning. This is just the first battle of Armageddon. We, the few, will bring this fight to the many. We will once and for all rid the world of omni-humans. Then, God will finally speak to us, because only then will we prove to be loyal to the end. Who's with me? About 2/3 of the camp shouted in agreement. Now, we regroup. Thank you for listening to Citadel Society, Ivoli's Journey. Book 1 of 5 in the Citadel Society saga. Stay tuned for more. This has been written and illustrated and narrated by Joel Armour.